Welcome to True Crime Threads, where dark stories unfold. Today, a husband's obsession sparks a deadly confrontation. The quiet suburb of Willow Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew each other. Families greeted one another on their front lawns, and barbecues were a weekend tradition. It was the perfect blend of community and tranquility, a place where newcomers were welcomed with open arms and longtime residents took pride in maintaining their pristine homes. Among the close-knit residents were the Millers and the Parkers, who lived directly across the street from one another. The Millers, Emily and her husband, Theodore, were known for their seemingly perfect marriage. Emily, a kind and sociable woman, was always involved in neighborhood events, while Theodore, a successful real estate agent, exuded charm and confidence. Together, they were admired by their neighbors, often described as the couple who had it all. Meanwhile, the Parkers, Anna and her husband, Evelyn, were a quieter pair, keeping mostly to themselves. Anna was a reserved yet graceful presence, often seen tending to her vibrant garden. Evelyn, a software engineer, was diligent and introverted, spending long hours at work or tinkering with his hobbies. Despite their differences in lifestyle, the two families exchanged occasional pleasantries during casual encounters, like waves in passing or brief conversations about the weather. Behind the well-manicured lawns and friendly smiles, an invisible thread of tension began to form, though no one could have predicted it. Theodore, with his seemingly flawless exterior, found himself increasingly drawn to Anna. At first, his fascination was easy to dismiss. He told himself it was a simple curiosity, a harmless appreciation for the elegance with which Anna carried herself. It began innocently enough, a wave here, a glance there, but as days turned into weeks, Theodore realized he was thinking about her more often than he should. The obsession started small. Theodore would linger on his front porch, timing his morning coffee breaks to coincide with Anna's daily jogs. If he happened to see her outside gardening, he'd find a reason to retrieve the mail or water the plants, even if he'd done so just hours earlier. To Emily, it seemed like her husband was simply being his usual friendly self, always eager to chat with the neighbors. To Anna, these interactions felt slightly off, but she couldn't quite put her finger on why. Theodore's feelings grew more complex with time. He began to take note of Anna's habits, the time she left for her jog, the hours she spent in her garden, and even which days she ran errands. It wasn't enough to merely observe, he wanted to be near her. The charming real estate agent who could effortlessly command attention at social gatherings now found himself inventing reasons to cross paths with Anna. His fascination became a quiet storm, churning within him, concealed beneath his polished demeanor. While Theodore's obsession simmered, life in Willow Creek continued as usual. The neighborhood barbecues and block parties provided ample opportunities for casual interaction, and Theodore always made sure to position himself where he could watch Anna from afar. Emily remained oblivious to the brewing storm, chalking up Theodore's attentiveness to his naturally outgoing personality. What no one could see, what Theodore himself barely understood, was how quickly his thoughts about Anna were spiraling. What began as idle curiosity had grown into something far darker, and while the neighbors in Willow Creek smiled and carried on, the seeds of a tragedy were already taking root. As weeks turned into months, Theodore's behavior became harder to ignore. What started as subtle attempts to be near Anna escalated into actions that crossed boundaries. Theodore convinced himself that his intentions were harmless, even as he made decisions that clearly invaded Anna's privacy. He began by installing security cameras around his property, which he explained to Emily were for neighborhood safety. On the surface, this seemed like a responsible step, especially in a community that prided itself on mutual care and security. What Theodore didn't tell Emily or anyone else was that some of those cameras were strategically positioned to monitor the Parker residence. He justified this to himself by thinking it was merely a way to keep an eye on Anna, ensuring her safety. In reality, it was an intrusion, a silent and obsessive act that signaled how deeply Theodore had descended into his fixation. The cameras, however, weren't enough to satisfy his growing need to be connected to Anna. He began altering his daily schedule to match hers. If he noticed Anna jogging in the morning, he would conveniently take his own walk at the same time. If she tended to her garden in the late afternoons, Theodore would find excuses to be outside, watering plants or making calls on his front porch. These orchestrated encounters felt natural to anyone observing from the outside, but to Anna, they started to feel like too much of a coincidence. Despite her initial instinct to dismiss Theodore's behavior as over-friendliness, Anna started to feel uneasy. His presence felt more calculated than casual, and the way his eyes lingered during their brief exchanges made her increasingly uncomfortable. At first, she tried to brush off the feeling, convincing herself she was overreacting. After all, Theodore was her neighbor, someone she saw often by the nature of their proximity. But as the encounters became more frequent, Anna couldn't shake the growing suspicion that there was more to his actions than met the eye. One day, Anna found an anonymous bouquet of flowers waiting on her doorstep. The arrangement was elaborate and expensive, filled with vibrant blooms carefully selected for their beauty. At first, she thought it might be a romantic gesture from Evelyn, but the accompanying note quickly dispelled that thought. Written in elegant handwriting were the words, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The message sent a chill down Anna's spine. She didn't recognize the handwriting, and the vagueness of the note only heightened her discomfort. Her instincts immediately pointed to Theodore as the sender. Though she had no proof, the attention he had been giving her made him the most likely culprit in her mind. Still, she hesitated to act on her suspicion. Confronting Theodore directly felt too risky, and without concrete evidence, she wasn't sure anyone would take her concerns seriously. At home, Anna shared her unease with Evelyn. She explained how Theodore's behavior had been escalating and told him about the flowers. Evelyn, ever the rational thinker, dismissed her worries as paranoia. He reasoned that Theodore was simply a friendly neighbor, and the flowers could have been sent by anyone. His dismissal left Anna feeling isolated, her anxiety simmering beneath the surface as she tried to make sense of the situation on her own. Meanwhile, Theodore's fixation deepened. The small, everyday encounters with Anna no longer satisfied him. The boundaries that had once existed between them both socially and physically were eroding in his mind. What Anna perceived as polite distance, Theodore viewed as unspoken connection. Every brief glance or casual smile she offered was, to him, confirmation of a shared understanding. What Anna didn't know, and what Evelyn refused to see, was that Theodore's obsession was no longer a harmless infatuation. It had transformed into something far more dangerous, something that could not be ignored for much longer. Emily stumbled across Theodore's secret by accident one quiet evening. While tidying up his office, she noticed his computer was left on and a folder named Anna sitting prominently on the desktop. Curiosity got the better of her, and she clicked on it, expecting perhaps work-related documents or something harmless. What she found instead made her blood run cold. The folder contained dozens of photos of Anna Parker, some taken from angles that made it clear they were not accidental. Many of them seemed to be captured from the security cameras Theodore had installed, while others appeared to have been taken covertly through windows, in public spaces, and even while Anna was jogging. It was clear Theodore had been following her movements for quite some time. Emily's hands trembled as she scrolled further. The photos were meticulously organized, with timestamps and notes attached to some of them. The notes detailed Anna's daily routines, the time she left for her morning jog, when she returned, and how long she spent tending to her garden. There were even entries about interactions she had with others, including brief conversations with neighbors. Theodore had been obsessively tracking every aspect of Anna's life. Horrified, Emily felt her stomach churn as she closed the folder. She sat frozen in disbelief, trying to process what she had just uncovered. How could her husband, the charming and seemingly thoughtful man she had married, harbor such an unhealthy fixation? The man she thought she knew had been leading a double life, hiding a dark obsession that had grown far beyond a simple attraction. When Theodore returned home that evening, Emily confronted him. She demanded an explanation, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. Theodore, instead of showing remorse, turned defensive. He accused her of invading his privacy, shifting the blame onto her for going through his personal files. His attempt to deflect her accusations only deepened Emily's sense of dread. Theodore's demeanor shifted rapidly as the argument escalated. When Emily mentioned the idea of informing Anna or Evelyn about what she had found, his anger turned to menace. He warned her not to interfere, insisting that she didn't understand the situation and claiming he was doing nothing wrong. Emily, though terrified, stood her ground, knowing that what Theodore was doing was far from innocent. Unsure of what to do, Emily decided she couldn't keep this secret. She feared for Anna's safety and felt it was her responsibility to act. But going directly to Anna or Evelyn seemed too dangerous, especially given Theodore's unpredictable behavior. Instead, she opted for an anonymous approach. Emily wrote a letter detailing what she had discovered, warning Anna about Theodore's obsession and advising her to be cautious. She mailed it to the Parker residence, hoping it would prompt Anna to take action. When the letter arrived, Anna was deeply unsettled. The contents confirmed the suspicions she had tried to push aside, but when she showed it to Evelyn, he dismissed it as a cruel prank. Evelyn's dismissal left Anna feeling isolated, unsure of how to proceed. Meanwhile, Theodore continued to spiral deeper into his obsession. What Emily didn't realize was that her attempt to protect Anna had enraged Theodore even further. Instead of deterring him, it fueled his determination to maintain control over the narrative he had created in his mind. As Emily grappled with her fear and guilt, she could only hope that the truth would come to light before it was too late. But Theodore's obsession had already reached a dangerous tipping point, and the lives of everyone involved were on the verge of unraveling. One fateful night, Evelyn returned home earlier than usual from work. As he approached his house, he noticed a shadowy figure in the backyard. His first thought was that it might be an intruder, but as he got closer, he realized it was Theodore. Evelyn was startled to see his neighbor lingering near their property in the dark. When Evelyn confronted him, Theodore appeared momentarily startled but quickly composed himself. He claimed he was there to discuss a property issue, and had knocked on the front door earlier but received no answer. Evelyn, uneasy but unwilling to escalate the situation, told Theodore to leave immediately and watched as he walked back toward his own home. That encounter left Evelyn with a nagging feeling of unease. While Theodore's excuse was plausible enough on the surface, something about his demeanor didn't sit right. However, Evelyn didn't share his concerns with Anna, dismissing it as a one-off incident that didn't warrant unnecessary worry. That same night, Anna discovered something that sent her anxiety into overdrive. While locking up before bed, she noticed scratches and signs of tampering on the back door lock. Her heart raced as she examined the damage, realizing it wasn't from normal wear and tear. Someone had tried to break into their home. She immediately woke Evelyn and showed him the lock. Anna's fear was palpable as she explained her growing unease about Theodore, recounting his increasingly unsettling behavior. She insisted they take immediate precautions, suggesting they replace the locks and install additional security cameras. Evelyn reluctantly agreed, though he still struggled to believe Theodore was a real threat. To him, the scratches could have been caused by something innocuous, and he didn't want to jump to conclusions. Despite Evelyn's attempts to downplay the situation, Anna couldn't shake the sense of danger. Every creak in the house, every flicker of light outside, set her nerves on edge. Her sleep became restless, plagued by nightmares of someone lurking in the shadows. Meanwhile, Emily, overwhelmed with guilt and fear, decided to take matters into her own hands. She couldn't live with the knowledge of what Theodore was doing without at least trying to protect Anna. She reached out to Anna directly, carefully choosing a moment when she knew Theodore wouldn't be around. Emily confided everything she had discovered: the photos, the notes, and her growing concern for Anna's safety. Anna was shaken by Emily's revelations, But she also felt a surge of validation. Her instincts had been right all along, and now she had confirmation that her unease wasn't just paranoia. Together, the two women discussed how to handle the situation. They agreed that confronting Theodore publicly, in a setting where he couldn't deny or twist the truth, might be the best course of action. However, before they could execute their plan, tragedy struck. Unbeknownst to either Anna or Emily, Theodore had grown increasingly erratic. The discovery of Emily's involvement had enraged him, feeding into his belief that he was being unfairly persecuted. In his mind, Anna's supposed affection for him was being sabotaged by Emily and Evelyn. As Anna and Emily prepared for their confrontation, Theodore was preparing for something far darker. His obsession had spiraled to a point where rationality no longer guided his actions. The lines between reality and his delusions had blurred entirely, setting the stage for a night that would forever change their lives. The tension in Willow Creek had reached its breaking point. The once peaceful neighborhood, with its friendly smiles and picture-perfect homes, was about to be shattered by the consequences of Theodore's unchecked fixation. On the night everything unraveled, the air in Willow Creek was eerily still. The tranquility of the neighborhood, usually so comforting, now felt oppressive. Anna and Emily had finalized their plan to confront Theodore the following day, ensuring they would be in a public setting where his ability to manipulate the narrative would be minimized. They hoped the truth would bring an end to the growing tension and protect Anna from any further advances. What they didn't know was that Theodore, driven by his delusions and a dangerous sense of entitlement, was one step ahead. As the Parker house settled into the quiet of the evening, Theodore was watching. Hidden in the shadows of his own home, he had spent hours consumed by the thought that Anna was slipping away from him. His mind replayed the moments he believed they had shared, a twisted collection of glances, smiles, and interactions that he had interpreted as something far deeper than reality. In his deluded state, he saw Anna's growing unease not as fear, but as frustration that external forces, like Evelyn and now Emily, were keeping her from him. Just past midnight, Theodore crossed the street, his movements careful and deliberate. He carried with him a small toolkit, an object he rationalized as necessary for fixing the situation. He approached the Parkers' back door, the same one Anna had found tampered with days before. This time, his intention wasn't merely to observe but to confront Anna directly and force a resolution to the fantasy he had constructed. Inside the house, Anna stirred in her sleep, a faint noise pulling her from a restless dream. Her initial grogginess was quickly replaced by a jolt of panic as she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps inside her home. Heart pounding, she reached over to wake Evelyn, her voice a harsh whisper filled with urgency. Together, they listened intently, their fears confirmed when they heard another sound closer this time. Evelyn grabbed a heavy object from the nightstand, his protective instincts taking over as he instructed Anna to call the police. As she fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking uncontrollably, the footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the creak of the hallway floorboards. It was clear whoever had entered their home was now just outside their bedroom door. The door burst open, revealing Theodore standing in the frame. His face was a mix of desperation and fury, his presence both startling and surreal. He began shouting incoherent accusations, his words a tangle of delusion and misplaced blame. Evelyn stood his ground, placing himself between Anna and Theodore, while Anna screamed for help into the phone, her voice echoing through the room. What happened next was a chaotic blur. Theodore lunged forward, his actions driven by a dangerous combination of rage and obsession. Evelyn fought back, and in the struggle the situation took a deadly turn. A sharp, metallic sound cut through the chaos, followed by a deafening silence. When the police arrived moments later, they found Theodore on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Evelyn, trembling and visibly shaken, stood nearby, clutching the object he had used in self-defense. The aftermath left the neighborhood reeling. The once idyllic Willow Creek was now the site of a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. Theodore's obsession, hidden behind a mask of charm and normalcy, had erupted in violence, shattering the illusion of safety that had once defined the community. For Anna and Evelyn, the scars of that night would remain, a permanent reminder of the danger that had lurked just across the street.